Hello, I'm your host, Leonard Duncan. Welcome to a new episode of ATV-TALK and Motorsports Podcast. Please join us every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We bring you interviews with industry professionals, live events, live news about the motorsports industry in every episode. Enjoy the show. Ian Thomas, welcome back to ATV-TALK. How are you, brother?
I'm good. It's great to be back.
That's awesome. Awesome. Hey, I've been wanting to have another conversation with you. You've been doing some desert racing, you've been riding some works, you've built a motocross bike, you've been posting stuff, and you're a busy guy. You're also have a very active regular life as well. How do you keep it all straight?
I don't. That's a simple answer. It's hard to do, but man, I think I just kind of got a routine down at this point. Started kind of the day-to-day life was how things started down here, and then I slowly just kind of like kept adding pieces to it, but one at a time. So I think I just kind of worked out, I guess, this schedule I have going now. So I spread things out enough, like these projects I'm doing, man, the MX, that machine right there you saw that just got done. Oh, that took, man, almost 3 years from when I got the frame to what it is now. That's taken just about 3 years to accumulate all the pieces, but I keep videoing sections of it. So as it builds, people can kind of see the progress as it goes, but then I add, the riding and the racing in between. So it kind of keeps things flowing the whole time. But yeah,
We had
it's
a
chaotic.
we had a problem with our Wi-Fi just a second ago, right in the middle of what you were saying.
Perfect.
Sorry about that. I'll ask the question again. With all the things that you got going on, how do you keep it all straight? You know, with the works and the motocross build and your regular job. I mean, you're all over the place.
Yeah. Well, like I was saying, I just kind of slowly kept adding one piece at a time, and I kind of worked out this rhythm that I've got going, and it's definitely a lot. It's still chaotic, but man, with like the things that I build, they take so long anyway that I kind of just feed stuff in between all that, so it kind of keeps the flow of everything going. And definitely had to tone it down after 2022 because we put, oh man, between everything I was building and filming and riding and racing, because we raced Best in the Desert, Works, Quad X, and Azop all in that same year. I didn't do full series of the other ones. I did all of Works and a little bit of Best in the Desert, but it just, there's so much there. We had to scale it back. So this year was just Best in the Desert, and then I'll focus on whatever I can next time. So yeah, it's just chaos. That's pretty much it.
Uh, are you actively involved in the team blind builds for the Warriors?
Yeah, so I have the cyber. We're calling it Project Cyborg. I have that one, and I am at the 1 yard line with the thing. But I ran into a no spark issue where now I've got my multimeter out, and I'm trying to figure out where I'm losing spark because I'm chasing electrical right now, so I'm trying to figure that out. Otherwise, the thing is together. The engine is together, sitting there on shock, staring at me right now, just off to my left, and I just have to figure out how to get that thing running, just get the spark going. I know the carb is good. I just rebuilt all that with a little bit of what I saw on one of your podcasts recently. I
Nice.
was listening in.
Right. Stealing that advice, right?
Trying. I didn't get all of it. I missed a couple things like that needle you talk about. I missed that one. So
I have that needle in stock. If it's not an 0405 carburetor, if it's an FCR, I have that needle in stock now.
Yep. All my stuff is FCRs.
Yeah, so. I have it. I have that needle in stock.
I'll be hitting you up soon.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Cool. But as all the creators are out there and the guys in the industry that are doing things, you're one of the guys that I watch and follow and look at some of your stuff. As well as I'm so busy doing my own thing, I only get to look at a few people But you and I have sparked up a friendship, and I just thought, I was just looking at how do you even, I know how busy I am. And then I think about how busy you are, and I go, dude, you might even be busier than I am because you got kids, a
Oh,
regular job, and a wife, and it goes crazy.
yeah. Oh, I got the kids inside watching a movie right now until when we get done with this. Then I got to go in, make dinner, and then she'll come home and then she'll take over. But yeah, it's like I said, controlled chaos at this point.
Oh yeah, it always is, isn't it?
Yeah, especially with those two. They're at the point now, just going off on the kids again. Those two are one is 8. He's going to be 9 here in December. The other one is 6. She turned 6 in June. So they're now at the point where they both have an attitude, and it goes in and out of they'll argue with each other and be at each other's throats. Then they're good for a while. Then one says something, and it's just back and forth nonstop.
Yeah, I had a daughter and a son that were 2 years apart, and um,
Yep.
yeah, they're 35 and 33, and it did nothing changed.
Perfect. I can't wait to look forward to that.
Yeah, just nothing changed. But
Yeah.
so, I wanted to ask about the activity that you and Jason have with the Warriors, and how is that going for you? And how are we getting the word out? And is it growing the reach? Is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, actually, yes, to a point where it's almost overwhelming at times. But we had to kind of slow it down to make sure we're not starting to reach into too many people's pies and things like that, and ask for too much. Things like I want to make sure that we're able to deliver as well. So this thing is like I said, it's at the 1 yard line. We're right there. I'm just diagnosing a couple things. And then we've had some great companies hop on, like FK Rod Ends helped us with this one especially. And between all our machines, FK Rod Ends helps with Heims and bearings and stuff. They just supply us with all that. So especially during the desert season, man, that was huge. You underestimate how important that hardware is until you really start going through it, and then you go, oh, that stuff's like that. If I could get sponsored by someone who could just supply me hardware, I'd be set just with
Right.
all that stuff. Um, but yeah,
Make the world.
yeah, some of those companies, Tire Spines helped us out. Sun F Tires threw a bunch of tires our way to make sure we at least had tires for the season. And then, yeah, other random companies, things like we had a company donate the Pingle shifter and electronics kit for Cyborg, and the Clake system, which is that clutch and brake on the left side. I've got that mounted. And Terry Cables helped us out a lot. Yeah, all kinds of people hop on board, but then you almost have to kind of choke it down a little bit to say, hey, I just got to make sure I get through this thing. I don't want too many people hopping on, and then all of a sudden I'm buried in all these parts and I can't use everybody's stuff. And then I don't want to offend anyone. I want to make sure I can at least get it done and delivered. So now it's on me to just get that thing running and make sure we're good to go and we can hand it over to those guys. So same thing
Well,
with
that'd be
what
great.
Jason's working on.
That's going to be great for the Warriors and getting them out there on the track and get them riding. And
Oh yeah.
so that one of the things I was wanting to know though is as you reach out to the Warriors, how are they receiving some of this? Are they getting excited? Are you getting more and more guys interested in off-road racing?
Oh, I was just going to go off on that tangent, and then you asked the question, so that was perfect timing. I keep, especially the 3 core guys that we know, Mitch, Josh Rockham, Adam Poppenhouse, Mitch Malott. Those 3 guys are kind of our core guys. They were the ones that helped us pit at Vegas to Reno. We've hung out with Josh and Mitch and those guys quite a bit at Debbie and Bill's compound up there. I keep them in the loop. I keep feeding them, pictures and videos of the thing coming together, adding shocks after they got rebuilt. And then those guys, what's been really cool is the feedback I get on things we can change. So there's a couple things I would have never thought about because I'm not an amputee vet, right?
Right.
Those guys gave me some input, especially the last time we hung out, Vegas to Reno. We were talking about modifications. And one of the cool things that came up was Josh Rockcamp being a Baja racer. He's raced Baja. I think Mitch has raced Baja on dirt bikes. And we came up with an idea of adding magnets inside the raft foot pegs with like a little bracket that holds it just inside the tread, bolts in with the foot peg, and then they have steel plates already on the bottom of their prosthetics, and it will suck their foot down to the peg, but they can rock the foot off. So in case, let's say, they do end up coming off the machine, they're not strapped in or they're not clipped in, because we thought about mountain bike pedals. You know how you can clip in on the egg beaters? Thought about that. But then we thought through it a little bit, talking back and forth with those guys, we came up with the magnets, and we're going to try the first set of magnets, see if they're strong enough so that their feet aren't vibrating across the pegs and out into the nets and things like that. And then the next one, talking with Adam Poppenhaus, he was sitting on the machines because we've had him on a few of these quads. And he goes, you know, man, because he's our double amputee vet, he goes, I really wish I had something that I could just hook my prosthetic knees onto, you know, squeeze the tank, as you would say. Um, and I came up with, I went and grabbed some foam practice softballs, and I cut one in half because it's solid foam. It's like almost like a rubberized foam. Cut it in half.
Right.
I was able to glue it onto the seat foam and stretch our seat cover around it. And there's two bulges right there, and it's right where his knees can hook around that. So he actually has something to grip so he doesn't slide back off the seat either. So that kind of stuff was really cool, talking back and forth with these guys. And I've actually had people hit me up to answer your question about how it's spreading.
Are you looking for the best suspension technology for your sport ATV? Look no further than Elka Suspension, the industry leader in sport ATV suspension technology. With championship wins in prestigious events such as the Dakar Rally, SCORE, Best in the Desert, ATV MX, Cross Country, and Works, Elka Suspension has established itself as the go-to choice for athletes and enthusiasts alike. But they don't just stop at ATVs. They're constantly expanding into new markets, including UTVs, trucks, SUVs, pit bikes, snowmobiles, and more. Their commitment to innovation and quality means they're always looking to improve and adapt so you can enjoy a smooth ride wherever you go. Want to learn more about what Elka Suspension can do for you? Visit their website at elkasuspension.com or give them a call at 450-655-4855. They will always be happy to answer your questions and help you find the perfect suspension solution for your needs.
Random people have hit me up now over Instagram messages, YouTube comments. A couple paraplegics have hit me up and said, have you ever thought about adding this for a backboard for paraplegics since they don't have use of anything below the hips? Have you thought about like using Velcro straps and a backboard, kind of like, you know, on Harleys you have your little backboard you can set on the rear seat?
We called them sissy bars.
Well, there's sissy bars, yeah, there's that. And then there's like the pad where if you have a 2-up seat, you can slide a pad in between the two seats when your
Right.
passenger
Okay.
isn't on. And
Yep.
have a way to mount that basically from the subframe up, so they can basically just strap themselves in with like a Velcro strap, and it holds them upright so that they're not sliding around. It's like, you know, that's not a bad idea either. At some point, maybe we could build another machine for people like that. But this one's going to go to these guys, and maybe in the future we can build another one where it's tailored a little bit more towards the paraplegics, you know, things like that. But a lot of stuff crosses over, like the Clake system and the Pingle shifter. So there's a base built, and now we can tailor little things to other people, which is the fun of it, really.
That's incredible that you're getting feedback like that from your listeners and the people that are watching, for this to come out. I mean, I get pictures from you guys too, and some of it I don't totally understand because I'm not immersed in it like you are, so I don't
Right.
understand all the nuances, but it's great to see what you're doing for those guys. It's pretty awesome that you're giving back that way.
Oh man, I'm most excited, honestly. I've got a picture of. I'll send you the picture, but it's Josh, Mitch, and Adam all sitting on the tailgate of the truck at pit. I want to say it was pit 6, and they're all sitting on the tailgate, and they're holding their prosthetic nubs up and everything. It's just this perfect picture of those three guys. And I just sat there and thought, like, as we're changing an air filter, those guys move around so well for missing legs. Like they can sprint around that bike, and they were changing air filters, checking chains, all kinds of stuff. We really got those guys involved. And I was just thinking to myself, I can't wait till I'm the guy pitting for you guys. I thought that would be so cool that we can just reverse this. I'll be the guy with the tools. You guys come in and I'll keep you going. Or I think there's a way we can do Guardian Angel. Basically, I ride with those guys. They're racing, but I'm just there hovering around those guys to make sure they make it.
Is that
So,
something that you think Best in the Desert's going to make that a guaranteed thing that you have that guardian angel?
and I don't know if Best in the Desert will. I think Legacy already had made that a thing for those guys when they raced. I think they raced, was it last year or the year before, where they raced Dirt Revolution, and they had a guy on a dirt bike being their guardian angel, basically. But I think he worked for Legacy. I'm not exactly sure. But I think Legacy is already cool with that. And I think Best in the Desert would be cool with that, especially if it's, Laughlin Desert Classic. That's a lap race, short race. They probably wouldn't mind that.
Well, because I know that in Dakar they've had the guardian angel. I know in Baja they had a guardian angel, where they kept track of both riders. So
Yeah.
it happened at other places. So I'm sure that Best in the Desert would be on board with it because, um, you have other riders that are paraplegics that have done it.
Right. And again, I don't think that Best in the Desert has been presented with this before. It may be new to them. I don't know. They've probably been asked before. I'm not sure, but it could be something that they're like, well, nobody's really come to us with this, so why not? We could try it. And then you've also got everybody who's on handlebars out there is looking out for each other. That's evident every time you're on one of those big races. Guys will stop. What do you need? Are you okay? I crashed in Laughlin, and 2 hours later, after the race, I'm sitting in the pit. I'm fine. I just got a little road rash. The dirt bike that was next to me came up to our pit and was like, "Hey, you were the guy on Q88, right?" "Yeah." "Are you okay? That looked bad." I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. Everything's okay." I was like, "Wow, I'm surprised you remembered."
Wow, but you know what? It is something, in Best in the Desert, that's something that Casey beat into us. You do not leave a downed rider
No,
unchecked,
no.
period.
You got a chance to help that guy out, do it. I mean, he's by himself, right? So two is better than one, three is better than two, you know?
Exactly. I like that about our sport and about the people in it. Your pro guys sometimes get away from it just a little bit because they're racing for money. It's a little different than the amateur level. But I've still seen the pros throw their races away for other guys, to make sure that they were okay.
Yeah,
You know.
it happened last year. It wasn't me or Jason. It was in my buddy Mike's section. Jason crashed. I broke my leg. We told Mike, "Hey, you're going to have to hop on and go from 8 to 10 to hand the bike back off to Ian." He goes, "Okay, sure." So he hops on the bike. Yeah, we're running quad pro, whatever. He's rolling. He came across that down dirt biker that had a broken femur and his leg was laying backwards. Mike just happens to be a cop. He's from Minnesota. And he came all the way down to help us. We were able to get him on the machine so he could race. He was our pinch hitter, you could call it. He was registered and everything as our spare rider. So he hopped on because we already had Jason out of the race basically because he got hurt. Mike came up on that guy. He texts me right away. He goes, "I came up on this down dirt biker. I'm stopping." We're like, "Absolutely, do it." Guy was unconscious. His leg was laying backwards, facing the wrong way. Mike hops off, finds a way to kind of tourniquet the guy's leg, and texts us. He goes, "Hey, I'm sorry, guys. I know this is going to kind of ruin the race," and blah blah. He goes off. We said, "Shut up. You're fine. Absolutely, stay with the guy. You're doing the right thing." And turns out he kept him from going into shock, and then stayed until he got airlifted out because he was in that mountain section where there's almost no way to him. They had to go to pit 9 and work their way back to him just because of how bad it was in there. So it was absolutely the right thing to do. So not worth
That's
passing that guy.
that's incredible that you have people like that that will give of themselves so much for another individual. It's just awesome to hear about, you know.
Oh, yeah.
What do you guys have other than that? What do you guys have coming up for, 2025, just for you and Jason?
Well, there's actually been some pretty cool developments. Jason's the social butterfly of the group, that's for sure. He talks to all kinds of people. He does most of the talking to sponsors and things like that. Well, he ended up talking to Mike Davis, who's up in Oregon, and he's building a chassis that I think it will have several different tabs so you can put different engines in it, but they're still kind of going over details. There might be a two-stroke engine going in a custom chassis with custom swing arm and A arms. And then we might start testing that for him to see if he wants to start building chassis. So you got another player in the aftermarket chassis game. So that's something big coming up in 2025. We'd like to help him out, run that thing through a couple races. Best in the Desert chopped another race off, so I think they're only doing 3 next year. But there are other opportunities to run that thing and really test that chassis and give him feedback so he can go back, make tweaks, whatever he has to do. And then probably going to get into some other types of racing. I have the opportunity next year to move back east, and then I can get into some GNCC, some TT. I've always wanted to try a little bit of TT. That looks hilariously fun, and maybe even some MX. Probably not at a very high level because those guys are on a much higher step than I am, but I definitely want to get into some MX because I do enjoy riding on track sometimes. So that's kind of what's coming up in 2025.
The XC stuff should be right in your wheelhouse from where you started riding, right?
Pretty much, yeah. When I started riding, and well, back home in Minnesota, yeah, everything's trails and trees and things like that. But we weren't, again, I wasn't riding sport quads. I was riding 4x4s, and we would just barrel those things through the trees, and then we would get yelled at when we got back by dad and the uncles. You're gonna break it, but yeah.
But back then they were built a little different than they are now.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Hey, I remember riding a Foreman, 450 Foreman, and you're thinking this is the coolest thing ever, for a mud quad, and now you wouldn't even, that's not even the one you would pick.
No, no, you wouldn't even look over there.
No, after riding that Gen 3 Outlander, my God, that thing is 1,000 cc's. It's just super fast. It's suspension, and that Foreman, gosh, for as great as it was, man, that's a rough ride.
Oh, I know that's the same thing I started on. The first machine I ever rode was actually Honda Big Red, and and I was bashing that thing down trails. That was really stupid, but it was fun.
Right.
So I think we had a Suzuki 230. I forget what they call them, not the 230S or something like that. But there's basically it's a rigid chassis in the rear, and then the tires. That was your suspension. They just looked
Yep.
like balloons back there. Yeah, we used to ride all kinds of stuff. Now the Honda Foreman is basically what carries the jug of water so you can go wash your Can-Am 1000.
Exactly. Exactly. It's not the cool 4x4 anymore. I don't understand why, Honda, Kawasaki, Yamaha, Suzuki don't come out with a 4x4 that's going to compete in that world. They have the technology and the ability. They just don't do it.
Yeah, it's kind of like they're just leaving it up to Can-Am and Polaris to just take that whole market and run with it. And they're like, you guys can have that. This is where we're good. This is our wheelhouse. I especially don't understand Suzuki. I get it. You got your King quad, but that's not the best quad. It's really not. And you got almost nothing else going on over there.
No, yeah, almost nothing. It's the strangest thing that, well, if you dive into Suzuki and see what they're doing, they're building miniature cars and selling them all over Asia and stuff like that.
Uh,
They're not selling anything but these little bitty cars that I don't even think you could fit in.
I definitely probably would have a problem with
Yeah. So, I mean, when I get in there, nobody else is probably getting in, but
that.
I don't even think you could get in. I mean, it's just
Yeah,
it's incredible.
remove
But
center console. You've seen Police Academy when the big dude gets in the car with him. He's trying to teach him how to drive.
right,
They
you have
have
to.
to put him in the back seat.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're looking at something like that. It's crazy what goes on, to make all these machines and to make it happen. But in your world, with the people that you talk to, what are any of the rumors that are you hearing from any of the manufacturers? Is there anything going on that you have, that none of us have heard?
I wish I could say yes, but it's the same murmurs that you guys hear or talk about. Same thing. I talked to Joe Toll as well. You've heard some of the same things recently, though, about him talking to another GNCC racer, and there's some email traffic going back and forth.
Right.
Yeah, that, and then we speculate. We try to speculate as much as we can. We try to figure out why Yamaha is, showing those blueprints for a Sport 4x4 and it's a ground up machine. And then you start speculating a little bit further. You think down the road, do they know something about other manufacturers? We all know they would spy on each other. They would figure out what the other guy's doing, try to get ahead. Why would they now just start putting that YZ dirt or hint at putting the YZ dirt bike engine in the YFZ? It
I mean,
almost seems like
yeah, but we don't
people
even
are
know if it came from Yamaha direct. I
right.
mean, I I thought I had gotten it from a good source that's what was happening. Now, here's my take on it. If they heard Honda was coming out with a bike, let's say in 26, that would be the perfect time to drop something like that because Honda's bike comes out, everybody's like, ooh, and an on, and then Yamaha just goes, bam, you know,
Yeah.
and takes the market right back immediately, with something like that. Because I do not believe Honda would ever put their CRF motor or a real close version of it in an ATV.
Are you ready to be captivated by one of nature's masterpieces? Discover the breathtaking beauty of Antelope Slot Canyon, a natural wonder in Page, Arizona. Join us on a guided tour and immerse yourself in the mystical light beams, rich colors, and serene landscapes. With tours at prime sunbeam hours, experience photographer's paradise and capture memories that will last a lifetime. Comfortable shoes, a camera, and a smile are all you need for this adventure. Book your journey today at Antelope Slot Canyon Tours and let the canyon enchant you. Please visit us now, antelopeslotcanyon.com, for more details.
Yeah, I don't think they would either. Again, they started out with a completely ATV tailored engine when they came out in 0405.
Mhm.
And then 06 and up, it seemed to mimic the CRF a lot more closely.
Yep.
There's a lot of interchangeable parts, which kind of makes sense. They just, they're changing other things like how it fits, and you've got your different gear ratios and things. But yeah, I don't think they would just take the CRF and dump it in there. I don't think that would work out. But um,
With a little bit of modification, you could take the same basic pretense of the motor and put it in there and maybe use the same electronics, to save some of your cost. Your aftermarket guys are going to be able to adapt faster. It's just like the Kawasaki. If Kawasaki would have used more of the motorcycle motor in that bike would still be being made and still be being used because it wouldn't have been such a turd.
yeah, and the Kawasaki is one of those machines too that I really feel like they came out with something. There were things that people like about it. I like the bike. I thought it was a cool looking bike, especially when you get guys who really get into the color schemes on them. I think they're a really rad looking bike, but man, it feels like they just before they even got to get going, they shut it down. It could have been so good if they would have just gone. We'll call it 2, 3 more years. That bike could have been really good.
Well, the electrical is where they went south. You
Yeah,
know, they gave it a bad electrical system, which hampered what they could do. I believe, reliability wise, especially in the amateur level. But when you started adapting motorcycle components to it to make it better, to change the electronics, the machine got really cool, but you were still stuck with you could only make so much horsepower for so long before it failed.
yeah. What did Mike Walsh say he was doing when Cody Gibson was racing for? Or I heard this on, I think it was Cody Jansen's podcast. He was talking to Cody Gibson when he raced for Mike Walsh, and they were on the Kawasaki's at the time. And he said they figured out real quick that, or maybe it was Mike. He said they figured out real quick you could only put about 10 hours on it before they were sending the rod through the cases because they would get the power out of it and then it would be done.
I was standing on the berm with Jimmy White, who was running the Team Kawasaki gig, and one of the other mechanics, and we're watching the Wienen. I think it was Wienen leading, and Creamer was doing well, and he asked, "What's the time?" And he goes, 36 minutes. And I go, 36 minutes. And he turns around and he's going to go, "Hey, we'll talk to you later," and they start walking away. And I go, "Hey, what's wrong, guys?" "Oh, yeah, he's done." And I go, "What do you mean he's done?" He goes, "Yeah, that's a 38. We'll be at the 38-minute mark. And that's when the motors are ending."
That's
And
when they.
Wienen's going up the hill, killing it. And it just goes, poof. And Creamer's on another portion of the track within 15, 20 seconds. Oh, and both of them just end right there. And I'm like, oh, that's not good. When you can time that you're not going to finish the moto, and I'm thinking, why didn't you just put a new motor in it?
Right. Oh man, that's a testament to the mechanics that they know down to the minute. Like, oh, yep, that's it. They're gonna hit it.
They came out and rode a works race. Same thing. They were running 1-2, checked out, poof, poof.
Oh, yeah. You got 50 minutes. You got to make if it's a pro race, hour and a half. You got
It
to.
was an hour and a half. They had to make an hour and a half. And
Geez.
it was, I was just in shock that they had this down pat. They knew when everything was going to fail, and they went out and did it anyways.
Yeah.
I mean,
Maybe make a statement. I don't know.
I just don't know why or how they could have done that and not made it better. But I talked to Mike Walsh, and he developed. I know we're getting off on a Kawasaki tangent. They don't even make any more. But Mike, my son was racing them, and we were trying to make ours better. So I was talking to Walsh about the oil cooler system because we were going to come up with our own. And I looked at his and I go, "Why do I want to build one? I'll just use his, because he's already got it." And we started having the conversation. After I got off the phone, it was like, what's the point? Why do I want to do any of this stuff? Because it's not going to make a difference.
Oh man. Yeah, all for naught, basically.
Yeah, I mean, my son joined the Navy very shortly thereafter, and it was moot point. We sold the machines and moved on, but um, it was fun while it lasted, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that makes me wonder though too, because I try to follow Trangizi Designs. I try to figure out what he's doing. He must not be taking that motor all the way out to that limit. He must have it in a good spot because Trangizi's doing really well with the KFXs, but I don't think he may not just be building them to that level. Maybe he's keeping it right underneath that mark so it doesn't become a grenade, basically.
I think if you put a good mid-range cam setup in it and raise the compression a little bit, tune it, and run it without making it a monster,
Yeah.
probably don't want to go over 13 to 1,
Okay.
because then it's probably past your reliability.
Yeah.
But Mild. That's a mild build.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
It's not, I mean, that's nothing crazy. I've grown to appreciate a nice, like spunky, mild machine. I really, really don't care about going crazy on compression. I have fun with that little Honda engine right there because that thing was just about making it as light as I could, try to take most of the rotating mass out of the engine, maybe polish some things, friction reduction, and then it's 12-8 to 1. So I didn't go nuts on compression, run it
Yeah.
on good fuel. I get Sunoco here. So I can run Sunoco 100 through the thing, and that thing is happy all day long. It runs cool, runs snappy. It feels, honestly, that carb in there, throttle response on that is like a well-tuned EFI machine. It's just like instant throttle response. It's just a lot of fun to ride that. And the power isn't smacking you in the face right off the bottom. It's a nice build, and it's just a lot of fun to ride. I think you can ride that faster than you could some of those monsters, although we're talking about very different caliber rider. But man, it's a lot of fun to build an engine that you know is not going to blow up on you, and it still chooches pretty good.
Well, that's the big thing. Most people forget rideable, usable horsepower is the goal.
Yeah.
Every engine builder can build a rocket ship, but rocket ships are pull pin, and what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a matter of time before it just scatters. Okay. And then you have to pick up all the pieces and do it again. And those are just money eaters. But if you build people rideable, usable horsepower, they ride longer, they have better race results, and they have more fun.
Yeah. I feel like that kind of should be the way to go. And that makes me wonder too, if Yamaha were to take that YZ dirt bike engine, would we be losing any reliability? Would that change anything really, other than obviously power and things like that? What would the gear ratios be like? What would you have to change your sprockets to accommodate for a dirt bike transmission? Probably not much different than what you would normally run, I assume. But yeah, I don't know.
I would assume that as advanced as the ATV program over there is, that you probably would have that different top end, but they would formulate it to work with the lower end that they have now, so that the clutching and the transmission are already figured out,
Yeah.
and you're not going to be going back and reinventing the wheel and having to figure out gearing and things like that. We're going to have more power, but that Yamaha motorcycle, that 450 is super reliable.
It seems so. I've only ever heard a couple times of some people blowing up their 450. But again, how much are you riding the rev limiter on that thing, man?
Well, there's so much that we don't know. People don't change the oil, they don't clean the air filter, they don't check the valves.
Yeah.
So when they blow them up, what really happened?
Yeah,
You
you
know,
got to dissect it. You really got to dissect it.
when they did head work, did they buy the dime store valves and guides, with the weak valve springs, or did they buy the good stuff? You just don't know.
Yeah. Or did they have, let's say they've got 15 hours on the engine and then they start porting and throwing a monster cam in it on stock valve springs and valves. And
And
then whoop, whoop, you drop one. I
yep,
don't know.
and makes a mess of everything, and then they call the Yamaha a pile of junk. Well, that's my big pet peeve. A lot of people get mad at some of the manufacturers or some of the models when they do things to it and it fails. Well, if you'd have done it right, it may not have failed.
Yeah. They, and a lot of it seems to be they compare it to older machines that they used to do the same thing to. Well, that's a different machine. Because I think these Yamaha, the new dirt bikes are 4 valve heads. They're not 5 valve, right?
Um, there used to be 5 valves. I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm supposed to know this, and I don't remember. I think
Right.
they
Because I heard they went back to a 4 valve head. I'm not sure why. They must have figured out something with flow, or they figured out that when you port something now, you have more material there around it. Maybe it's more reliable. I don't know.
it's possible. I know that Yamaha head is very, very durable. It's a good product. It's good for the ATV consumer because it's so reliable. Even after you do performance work to it, a lot of people complain about the Honda head, but the Honda head, if you're checking the valves all the time and keep it within spec, it'll live an extremely long time if you keep it in spec. If you don't, it's going to beat it to death and you're going to have problems. And every head builder, like every guy you go to, is going to give you an hour limit. Hey, then that's your limit. That's where you should know that you got to take the head off and service it and to keep its reliability. I'm sorry, they're no longer recreational toys. These are single cylinder Indy cars, and you have to treat them that way.
Yeah, I did the math one time just because I thought about it, sitting there looking at. I built a 5.3 truck engine. I was going to turbo that thing and put it in a truck, but I started thinking these ATV engines, so 96 millimeter bore on the Hondas, and I think it's relatively close on the Yamaha. If you upscale that into a V8, the horsepower you're getting out of, like, let's say a fairly mildly built Honda, like a pretty well built Honda, your mid 50s. You upscale that into a V8 and you have a 400, it was like 450 horsepower, 3.6 liter V8 or something like that, up in like a 3 some odd liter V8, which is naturally aspirated. Like that's actually pretty damn good if you think about it. The
Right.
stuff you're able to squeeze out of these little single cylinder engines.
Well, the technology that we're not even touching on that the motorcycle industry, the street bike industry is using with V twins and things like this, or even some of the inline four stuff, where they're, getting a four-cylinder motor to rev to 16, 18,000 RPM.
Oh yeah.
This is phenomenal. I mean, your CRF 250s and YZ 250Fs, I believe, even your KTM models, they're revving past 13.
Yeah, I've heard CRFs and some of those KTMs are like 14,000 RPM.
Yeah,
Or maybe that was a YZ 250 I heard.
dude, it's just insane
It's absurd.
for a four stroke. Banshee's 10,000 RPM.
Yeah, they kind of live up there.
Yeah. And you're thinking, well, that thing revs forever. Well, my four stroke revs higher.
Yeah, it just doesn't sound like it, but it
Right.
does. Yeah.
Right. And my four stroke's not going to live near as long at that RPM range as the Banshee will.
Yeah, that's the other crazy thing too when you think about it. Like I a guy I work with here at work, he rides a KTM dirt bike and he rides it hard. He used to race Glen Helen and stuff when he was a kid. Raced I think he had an XR 100 he raced, but he's a really good enduro rider. And I was talking to him today about how many hours do you have on that thing? He goes, well, I just did the top end at 100 hours. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Right.
He goes, yeah, I just went through. I've got a little bit of it's not even a gouge. He says he's got a scrape, but then it runs with the cross hatching. So he's checking everything and he just re-rings, new piston, rebuilds the top end. He's good to go again. It's like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, if you're changing the oil on the modern day four-stroke motors and running good quality fuel, I think that's a little excessive on hours, but
Yeah.
hey, most of your TRX 450R cranks, you get 200 hours out of them, you better be thinking, oh boy, we're done, because it's getting to the end of its life. You have people that run farther than that, but 200 hours is just insane.
Yeah. And again, it begs the question, how did you ride it during those 200 hours? That's also different. What kind of pistons you have on top of that thing for those 200 hours, stock crank, I could see making it that long for stock piston, stock top end. You just open the air box, some jetting in a pipe. Yeah, okay, that could probably live, especially if you're religious with oil changes and things. But I found out in Prim 2021, the last round, just how many hours I probably had on that crank because it's scattered. It went quick.
It wasn't happy with you.
No, I was like, okay, I was probably well over 150 hours on that thing.
Right. And we raced 250 miles on a race motor, in the desert. We're pulling the crank and putting a new one in.
Yeah, you're basically rebuilding engines. I think that was another thing. Talking to Jason, he goes, "Well, with the parts I've accumulated and the engines he's building or getting built, he's like, basically, I'll have an engine for each race." All right, well, that's much better odds at that point. You just swap one in, and then you have a
Right.
fresh engine, and then the other one's getting built while you're racing the next one. So yeah.
Exactly. Exact saves time too, because any good engine builder is booked and you're probably not going to get it in time.
Yeah, you're going to see that engine. And some of the guys we work with, they really do try their best to make sure that it gets done. But man, this time of year, especially out here, those duners come out of the woodwork, and like ATV builders are just getting slammed with engines. Shock builders are getting slammed with shocks. And yeah, it goes nuts. So if you do have multiple engines, if you can somehow swing multiple engines, that's the way to go. Because we really pushed the limit on that Honda last year. We put every mile on that engine.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's totally true.
Yeah, not the smartest idea, but I did rebuild the top end at least. And okay, we got a fresh top end, but let's see how far it goes. Yeah, that was pretty much it. You're on the throttle and your fingers are crossed at the same time.
Yep, yep, I've been there. It's unbelievable. That we talk about the Dooner crowd, or the people that are coming out for your winter sports in the western portion of the country, and they have no idea that companies like ours are so busy with non-seasonal work that if they don't start showing up in April to have their machine for October, they're not going to have it.
Right. Yeah. Especially if they're doing a full ATV we're talking wheels up, basically, because I'm sure that happens.
Well, yeah, I have them from all over the world right now, and they take up a lot of space. They take a lot of time, which you've built complete chassis. I mean, how much room it takes, how long it takes. If you're dealing with chrome or CAD or
Oh,
anything like that when you're doing a restoration. And then you have your standard engine rebuilds where you just pull it out of the chassis and you're doing a rebuild for them, and then you have to go through the chassis just to make sure that it's good for the next season. I don't have a crew. You're looking at the guy,
yeah.
and brother does the engine, and between that, we're booked solid full. And if I tell you if you've called me and tell me, hey, can I bring my stuff in? And I say yes, don't be in a hurry to get it back, but be thankful that I had a spot to put it in.
Right. Well, and then hopefully you get some guys who've dropped an engine off, and at least they were able to take it out, bring it to you as just an engine, and hopefully they drained the oil on it. So, I've now had that happen a couple of times, but it's like, okay, all right, I see it now. Anyway, hopefully they have the foresight to go, I might not get this for a while. Don't worry about getting it done in a month. I'll come back to you. This is kind of a hard date, but at least you're 2 months out on it.
I give them the evaluation time frame, and I tell them I'm not even going to answer the question when you're going to get it back. I'm just giving you the time when you'll get your evaluation.
Yeah.
When you have that phone conversation with my brother, he'll tell you when you're going to get it back, and we just go from there. And it's just all you can do. You can only do what you can do in a day, and 7 days a week isn't fair for anybody. And we're actually going to start taking a day.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
It's just, we've been running wide open 7 days a week since, just right at the COVID time started, and it hasn't slowed down for us. And dude, I'm 58, my brother's 60, and I'm sorry, we need that day. And our wives need that day to, because we have honeydews that we are not doing.
Yeah. Well, so that brings up a question I had in mind. how much, looking at all those things happening, getting up there, how much do you look forward to another engine builder that just starts coming out and doing great work, and you hope like you see the next generation of engine builder, things like that?
To be totally honest with you, I'm very worried for our industry
Yeah.
because I don't see anybody but gray hairs doing a good job.
Oh, so you don't think the next generation's got it yet?
They don't listen to the older guys. They think they know, and they don't. And they're not getting good feedback because they're doing a lot of things that we already did that didn't work. And if they would take the time to get under the wing of somebody that is established, and learn, then I think they do better. We're always willing to help people, even either other companies, and they're just the young people are just stubborn. And I get it. They're trying to make it on their own and establish on their own and be on their own 2 feet. But very few people in our industry came through by themselves. Curtis Sparks rode for Honda, but guys like my dad were there. And Curtis would call and ask my dad questions. Even though Curtis had a lot of knowledge, he still had somebody to bounce questions off of, and he wasn't afraid to ask. Other guys in the industry, called, and spoke with my brother, and I've dealt with other people in the industry myself. And it's great when you see them understand what it takes to develop yourself. And it's not 5 years, it's not 10 years to develop yourself into a name in the industry that's solidified. It's going to take you 20 years.
Sounds like it's more of a marathon than it is a sprint.
It's a total marathon.
Yeah.
You're never going to come in and be the flash. If you're the flash guy of the month, next month it's going to be somebody else.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the flash guy of the month. You want to be the guy there that, hey, I want to knock that guy off the top of the mountain, and that guy's still at the top of the mountain. He may not be winning the races or being the guy that's, doing it, but he's still there.
Mm-hmm.
He's still at the top of the mountain, even though he may not be, what you consider the greatest of all, the greatest engine builder right now, or this or that, but he's still up there.
So how much from what you guys have learned from, how long has Duncan been at it now? 40 years?
Almost 50 years.
Yeah, almost 50 years. How much translates from what you've done starting, let's say, your first 20 years? How much of that translates into these new machines you're seeing? I mean, obviously the YFC's been out for a hot minute now, so you've been able to work some tricks with those things, but how much of it you were able to translate forward?
So not everybody realizes we were 4-stroke, then we were 2-stroke, and now we're 4-stroke, 2-stroke at the same time. So we already have 4-stroke knowledge. And a 4-stroke is a 4-stroke. But with the short stroke and the big pistons, you have different techniques in making them work better. So the machines and the tools that you use have gotten better. We still use the same cam grinder that we used, 40 years ago. So some of that has changed. The style of valve springs you use, those have changed. What kind of guides you can use, those have changed. But our base theory of how to do things hasn't changed.
Okay, because I mean, it seems like a cam follows the same basic principles. You just grind it to different angles, different.
They're different because you have boat anchor style engines that were just run no matter what you did to them, that are never going to be super high revving. They're more torque monsters, a lot of air cooled stuff, to an engine now that when I say that it's a single cylinder Indy car, I mean it, because you have a high lift cam in it, you're higher compression, you're higher revving, you're doing all of these things with what is better quality aluminum, better castings, Nicosil hard coating, so you're dissipating heat differently. The biggest problem that I can tell you that I have in the industry today from when I started is gas.
Oh, the fuel. Yeah, I'll agree with that because even I've seen the difference, and I've
Well,
only been messing with these two.
You mentioned a product earlier in the show that I would never use.
Sonico?
No, I would use Sunoco real fuel, but I won't use the chemical fuel.
Oh,
If it's
okay.
made with chemicals and everything, it's not real fuel. It doesn't burn the same, and it's still corrosive to the materials in your carburetor.
Okay.
So you use the real fuel that isn't corrosive to the brass and the aluminum, doesn't affect your O-rings, and can sit for an astronomical long time and not cause an issue, where your fuel injected machines aren't affected by the modern day fuel because it's built and designed for the modern day fuel. But when you raise the compression, you still need the better fuel.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these are things that there are people out there that will argue it, and they can argue all they want. For the amount of carburetors I work on and the amount of corrosion and problems that I see from gas, that and I'm going to say this, and some people will balk, but the government lies. The government lies to us and tells you that all this stuff, you got to take it out of there. You don't need this. It's not good. Well, it's good for the engine, and it makes it work right. The stuff we're putting in our cars today is actually bad for humans, and people don't even realize
it. As far as I know, fuel is not good for humans, period, since it was invented.
Well, the tailpipe, your exhaust pipe didn't drip water out before. Yeah. Now it does, and that water is toxic to humans. Well, it drips onto the ground. So what is it doing to the ground? What is it? All these environmentalists think they know all this stuff, and I know nothing, but they know less. And they went to school for it. So my way's not the only way. I know that there's other smart guys out there, and they do some incredible things. Mark Baldwin is one of those guys. He is becoming one of the innovators with the modern day engines. I like a lot of the things that I hear coming out of his voice. I don't agree with everything he does, but I'm not in his world. I'm not building motocross engines. I'm building engines for either endurance machines or customers that want to go ride for, 200 hours. So it's a different world. If I was building motocross engines, probably be doing some of the same things he is, but I'm not. So
that's one of the cool things that I like so much about these ATVs is, and I'm sure it translates to bikes and trucks and all that stuff, but being in the West Coast, the environment out here has, I don't want to say forced, but it's pretty much molded builders to do things a certain way. They've learned a bunch of things, and like roll design. Roll design makes a really durable product. I've bashed the crap out of those arms over, I don't know how many different things. I smoked a cinder block sized rock in a Laughlin Desert Classic. Kept on rolling. It took a big dent to it. I felt really bad because I could just hear the money floating away when I hit that thing, but very durable product. It works great out here. You almost see nothing else in the desert. And it's kind of a product of the environment. The way engines are built, you talk to guys on the East Coast, a lot of them are running those I don't want to say K&N filters, but K&N style filters. Out here, foam, pre-filter lids, the way things are designed, tire sizes, shock tuning, stuff like that. It's funny because things come in so many different flavors between east side, west side, anything in the middle, dunes, desert, motocross track. The motocross tracks here are different from motocross tracks out on East Coast. So just everything is kind of molded these things in a certain way. The way you build engines is different than the guy on the East Coast building moto engines, who's different than the guy who's building a GNCC engine. they got to make those things live for 2 hours, you know? So it's really cool to me to see how things change, and I see the differences, especially the more I get into it and I can see all these different things. It's really cool to see the difference between all these machines and how people build them, especially when it comes down to different riders, how they ride them. It's crazy.
And most people think just like you do that we are exclusively a West Coast design. We've been building engines for around the world for everything, and we do everything. It's just you have to lean to what your customers want, and 98% of my customers don't want a back east style motocross engine.
Right.
You know,
but then that would make
I'll build them if that's what they want, but I would never send a guy to works with that engine.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I'm getting at is you've become like this. Basically, if Baldwin were to build a works engine, he might ask you some questions.
Right. We'd have a short little conversation. He'd go, okay, I get it. You know, and
yeah, right. You know how to do it, but there's some things he's like, what do you know about that stuff that I might be able to add over here? Same thing.
Exactly. So. And you know what? The old guard, like you were asking, the old guard has enough gumption to get on the phone and call one another and talk to each other. You know, I remember, and this has been 20 years ago now, but when Yamaha, the 04 Yamaha came out and they had an oiling problem. And, you know, when they came to our shop, because we were the closest company, I had rods from 4 different other engine builders and ourselves all laid on the table, you know, and they're all identical. And we're telling the guy from Yamaha, how can, you know, 5 different engine builders have the exact same failure and it be their fault?
That's a good point.
Guys like, gotcha, you know.
Understood.
And they solved the problem, but it took them to 07 till they solved the problem. But you know, they figured it out. They understood that it wasn't us, it was them. And then all the engine builders figured out how to solve it ahead of time. And you know, one guy does it, the other guy's doing it, and eventually you see 4 or 5 guys doing the exact same thing. Well, they all figured it out on their own. They just do it differently. And that's what I see different. And maybe it's because I don't talk to some of the younger builders. And you don't hear, and that's probably why I feel the way I do. But I worry about the industry, you know, but I shouldn't, because when I'm gone, it doesn't really matter. I'm not there anymore. You know,
right. You won't have to worry anymore.
No, and I mean, I don't know how much time I have left. No, none of us do. I could be here 10 years, 12 years. I could be here 2 years. Who knows? I love it. And I love building bikes. I don't think I'll ever stop wanting to build machines. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, don't forget to share us with your family and friends. The podcast is available on all streaming platforms, and you can find us on social media as ATV-TALK Podcast. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Rumble, and Twitter.